Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we're taking a look at the CJRB resource. This has been a very interesting review for me. This knife has taken me on quite the journey, and I'm excited to share it with you guys and tell you about this knife. Let's go ahead and jump right in with a blade length measurement. If we're measuring just our sharpened edge, you can see we're coming in here over 4 inches on the sharpened edge if we measure all the way back. Yeah, this is a big knife. Very big knife. He's a chunker. He ate his vegetables. He grew up big and strong. Let's go ahead and get our size comparisons out here. Starting us off with our rats. There's the 2. Yeah, look, it's absolutely dwarfing the rat 2. Here's the rat 1. It's still absolutely dwarfing the rat 1. Yeah, this is a large knife. Let's go ahead and grab our Civivi comparisons. Whoops. Here's our Elementum, or the Elementum 2. And here's our Praxis. And yep, this knife makes the Praxis look small, which is not easy to do. Let's go ahead and grab our USA Made comparisons. Spyderco PM2. Benchmade Bug Out. Very nice. Very nice. And let's go ahead and compare this against some other large folding knives reviewed just recently. Here's the Cold Steel 8010 Light. And here's the Cold Steel Engage, just because I've got it on the table right now. And let's wrap up our size comparisons by comparing it against some fellow CJRB models. Here's the classic Feldspar. Here's a knife I haven't had on the channel in a while. Here's the Caldera, which is a large knife, but not so large when compared to the Resource. And let's close off size comparisons by comparing it against some other XL size CJRBs. Here is the Frac. And here is the large Pyrite. So all these knives are very similar in overall length, but the Resource is a little bit taller than the Pyrite, and in terms of thickness, both in the blade and the handle, it is substantially bigger than the Pyrite or the Frac. All right, what are we looking at for our materials here? We have a blade of RPM 9. This handle is G10 scales over steel liners. Steel pocket clip. It is a liner lock, and we are running on bearings. This is also a Dirk Pinkerton design, which we can see right there. There's his maker's mark, Dirk Pinkerton. Awesome. Let's go ahead and go to the cutting footage, and I actually recorded a bunch of extra footage for this review, so let's go ahead and get to it. Alrighty, guys. Let's talk about the CJRB Resource. So before we get into that, I'm filming this pretty quickly after I unboxed it, actually. By pretty quickly, I mean like 2 weeks ago. This knife has had a lock failure. Now, I have not used this knife in a hard use scenario. I am going to be trying to push this knife to some limits here in a couple of weeks out on the ranch, doing some more heavy duty stuff. I have not done that yet. This review cutting is just about how well this blade performs. So any issues that we have with lockup and things like that will be covered throughout the rest of the video. But yeah, you guys know how this channel works, right? You know how this channel works. I carry stuff, I use it, I enjoy it, and if there's a problem, I will find it and I will tell you guys about it. So yes, this knife has had lock failures. Whether those lock failures happen in heavy duty use, I don't know yet, but I will find out. Okay, so let's talk about that action. Very smooth. A lot of that is because the blade is so big, but the detent is tuned nicely. You can use the thumb studs to thumb it out, reverse flick it, slow roll it, and then you do have this fuller. And the fuller is weird because it does work. I can even kind of, okay, maybe I can't thumb flick off the fuller. Okay, there we go. It does work but I don't like it. I don't like the floor that much. The thumb studs definitely work much better. But yeah, that's okay. So there we go. Action, good to go. Ergonomics. This knife works really well ergonomically. It fills the hand very nicely. The shape of it is really, really good. Obviously, it's a big handle. A lot of hand sizes are going to fit on this. You got some jimping up here that is actually functional. It's almost too smooth, but it is still functional. My one problem is that these edges are a little bit sharp. Now, wearing gloves is going to completely negate that and make that problem go away. But right now, yeah, it does feel a little bit sharpish when you're just barehanded. So not a huge fan of that. All right, let's talk about the carry. So there's a clip, not a deep carry clip. I really appreciate that. I'm glad I didn't put a deep carry clip on this knife. Not every knife needs a deep carry clip, and especially a knife like this that's kind of geared towards more of those, you know, heavy duty environments. I think this was a smart choice. It is also reversible. They send you an extra clip in the box because this one does curve off this way, so you can't just flip it over. So thank you, CJRB. Thank you for looking out for the lefties. That's awesome, right? They appreciate it. All the lefties in my audience, I can already hear them going, yes, reversible clip. So good job, CJRB. Now, how does that clip work in and out of the pocket? Pretty well. Now, the knife is big, right? So you are going to feel it. So if you're someone like me who's used to carrying knives about this size, you're going to adjust to it real quick. And even if you're someone who hasn't carried big knives before and you think this might be your first big knife to carry, I think you'll get used to it as well. The clip does work very, very nicely, and it does make carrying this knife pretty fun. So there we go. Let's go ahead and cut some stuff. Well, actually, it's almost, is it a drop point? Yeah, just barely a drop point, almost straight back blade, AR RPM 9 steel, which I love. Let's go ahead and see what the flat grind on this bad boy is capable of. Oh, I will say, remember I had that little nick in my blade? I did take that out, so this edge is not, it's not a virgin edge. Whoops. There we go. Sometimes you gotta try twice to get through that tape. Big, broad, flat grinds. They slice like no one's business. You can get to utility cuts, as you saw earlier. I wouldn't say it's the most intuitive or easy thing, but you can definitely do it. I predict it's going to do very, very well with our rope here. Piece of cake. Whoa. 1, 2, 3. Yep, that was more like I was expecting. No problemo. Those big broad blades get through that pretty well. I kind of expected it to go through a little bit easier, but not bad. Not bad. All right, let's see how that geometry is. Whew. Oh my goodness. Okay, look. The lockup disappoints me, but everything else about this knife, this is right up my alley. Holy cow. I love these big knives that just, look at that. Look how slicey that, oh my goodness. This is my favorite kind of pocket knife. It is kind of these big, but super slicey, just performance-oriented folders. I mean, this thing is crazy. This little flap was already on there before we started cutting, so that wasn't this knife, but very clean, very consistent. Passed through amazingly well. So yeah, CJRB did a great job grinding this. They did a great job with this blade in general. I'm a big, big fan. So good deal. We don't have a table to throw a knife into, which is sad, but yeah, there we go. Let's go ahead and get back to the rest of the review. Well, today's ranch work knife is a CJRB resource, and one thing I'm discovering that I kind of like is this big fuller. It allows me to open this easily two-handed with gloves. It's also easy to get to the thumb stud. It's a liner lock, so with gloves sometimes getting in there is not the easiest, but it is doable. let's go ahead and get these things cut. I've got mixed feelings about this straight back blade as far as ranch work applications go. Pretty good for, you know, outdoorsy stuff though, and also very comfortable with gloves. This is a big chunk of a knife, and gives a good grip. There we go. I think I can even reverse flick it with that fuller and gloves. Yeah. Oh, come on. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, I'm getting your grub ready. All right, well, it's day 2, carrying the resource here on the ranch, using it for chores and stuff, and I've got mixed feelings. I like the size of it. It feels really good in hand with gloves on. It's a pretty easy knife to use with gloves, besides the liner lock thing, but I can overcome that. I'm not sure how I feel about the blade shape. This is a really useful blade shape for certain things like bushcrafty, outdoorsy stuff. It's a great slicing blade shape. It's not the best for hay string, but that's kind of a niche need right there. So, liking it so far. We're gonna do some more testing. Yeah, I gotta get inside because I think I got a couple of broke toes. A little bit ago, hay truck ran over my foot. I jumped down to grab some string out of the hay that we're giving the cows, and felt a couple things go pop in my toes. So, and now they're starting to hurt. So we're gonna get inside and take a look at that. Well, there's one use for an old rusty axe. Smashing the mice that get in your grain buckets. Winter on the ranch. Good deal. Well, I figure this is a good time to give some updates on the resource as I sit here in the tractor going at a blistering 1.1 miles per hour. Yeah, so the resource has been turning out to be a little bit better than I thought it would be. The lock failure that I had during the review, I have not had any issues with the lock since then. I've done a couple of spine whack tests, and it seems to be doing all right. It could be that lock just needed a little bit of time to wear in, to move over to where it needs to be for a secure lockup. That happens sometimes, right? Sometimes you just got to break a knife in, and a lock is sometimes one of those things that needs to just be given some time. So I've been using it here on the ranch. It's a great knife to use with gloves because it's so big and girthy. You get a great grip on it. But disengaging the liner is a little bit tough, but it's not anything that I can't overcome. Well, it's been an eventful Christmas Eve morning. Little bro and I fed the goats, fed the cows, built some fence, smashed some mice to death with an axe.
I was here for that, sadly.
Now I'm ready to go in and get some cocoa. Don't you?
Oh, and what about
Pancakes or something.
We'll see.
Carrying the CJRB resource for chores today. What'd you have?
My classic, the Doom Blade, always.
Hey guys. So I think this is going to be the last little bit of extra footage I record for the CJRB resource. If there's a bunch of cuts in this video, please forgive me. I've tried to film this video a couple of times now. It's 10 degrees out here, and my phone has not been enjoying the cold, so yeah, bear with me. Okay, so I've been using the snot out of this knife recently, and I gotta say, I'm starting to really like it. which is awesome because after my unboxing first impressions video, I was kind of disappointed with it. But it's growing on me. It's performing well, and I'm enjoying carrying it. And that's a beautiful thing, right? And that's why I do first impressions videos, because a lot can change between taking a knife out of the box and actually reviewing it. So one thing that I like is it seems the lock has wore its way in. I've done a couple spine whack tests that it's passed. Maybe I'll do some more here, and if I need to, I can adjust it. I can, bend the lock bar, things like that. But, it's been holding up pretty well, and I appreciate that. So, what we're going to do today is, this looks like a bushcraft knife. I've said it, other people have said it, and I want to go ahead and put it through some wood, just because I feel like this video wouldn't be complete if I didn't do that. So, that's what we're going to do. Let's do a little bit of whittling and stuff. Ugh. I'm sitting on a metal chair right now, and my butt's getting cold. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and tilt down a little bit so you guys can kind of see what's going on a little bit. So this straight back, well, it's a drop point, but it's almost a straight back. Very, very powerful blade shape. Very powerful. Lets you really put some force down on that edge. As you can see here. Big knife. This is also kind of an ergos test. I'll tell you one thing. If I was barehanded right now going through this wood, yeah, that hurts. This knife does have some sharp edges, which, maybe aren't the best. Yeah, enough of that. But when wearing gloves, this knife is actually really, really comfortable. The ergonomic lines allow me to really lock in. I can index this knife really well. This jimping actually works with gloves to kind of provide an index. There we go. Nice little whittling thing. Go. Overall, yeah, I definitely see this being a handy outdoors folder. It's definitely big enough to tackle a whole bunch of tasks. You've got that hand room, nice big girthy folder. Yeah, definitely. I see this being something you might take with you camping or something like that. So there we go. I am cold as a witch's tit, so I'm going to go ahead and head inside. So, there we go. Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk about what I'm liking and not liking about this very, very interesting knife. So number one, the CJRB resource. CJRB names a lot of their models after geology-themed things, and as a geologist, I'm a big fan of this. So the name resource, I'm guessing they're kind of going for like the natural resource, which, let's see, I should put out some like economical minerals or something here on the table. We have a chunk of amphibolite that has a whole bunch of actinolite in it. In fact, actually, I think this chunk of rock here is pretty much all just actinolite. Or epidote, my bad, not actinolite. Epidote. Which, we've got a little chunk of fluorite here. A little bit of fluorite surrounded by some quartz and barite. Fluorite is an economical mineral. It was used especially back in the early 1900s and stuff. It was very, very sought after. They called it fluorspar. It's actually used to anneal steel, so that kind of fits. Got some more quartz. We've got some dinosaurs and some fossils out here. These are crinoid fossils in this case, so like fossil fuels, some natural resources. Although most of our oil, natural gas comes from plant deposits that are carboniferous in age, rather than Mesozoic dinosaurs or these crinoids, which are echinoderm animals. Got some chalcopyrite out here, but yeah. Anyways. Natural resource, I like it. I love the geology thing that CJRB does, so it's very, very cool. Moving on, let's talk about the action, because this knife actually has a really, really nice action. Very good detent. That thumb stud really, really pops. You can reverse flick it. Very smooth on the close. A lot of that is probably because the blade is so large, but hey, it's still very satisfying. You do have this fuller that you can reverse flick off of. And sometimes I can thumb flick off of the fuller. The fuller, I wouldn't say is my favorite means of deploying the knife. However, it does work with gloves on and stuff, and it does kind of help if you're wearing gloves or something to like pinch the knife and open it two-handed, if that's something you want to do just to be safe. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, the action is very, very nice indeed. All right, next up, I love that they gave you two clips. So you can see here the clip is reversible for the lefties, but you can see the clip is curved along, kind of following the contour of the scales here. So it would not be flippable. They send you an extra clip in the packaging, which is really, really cool. That's something that Cold Steel's done for a while. Other companies do it too, of course, but I'm glad to see CJRB doing that because I think it's a really, really nice thing to do. Include the lefties. If you want to use a specialized clip, a lot of companies will say, well, we just won't include the lefties, but hey, you have options. So I really, really like that. Next thing, let's talk about the handles a little bit. This thing is very comfortable, and we'll talk more about the ergos later, but this thing's very comfortable, and look how much room I have on that handle. Like, if you have XL sized hands, this knife is still going to fit you. This has tons and tons of room. And one of the things I like most about this handle is that it feels great with gloves on. This was a very easy knife to index with gloves. I feel like I had a really good grip. I could feel where my edge alignment was. The jimping up here, I wouldn't say it does kind of work with bare fingers. With gloves, like I could really feel that jimping, and it helped me to, like I've already said, index the knife. But yeah, very, very nice ergonomic lines, locks you in, and I really appreciate that. I used this knife a lot while I was wearing gloves, and I really, really liked how it felt with gloves on. I mean, it's a fairly chunky knife, so you've got a lot to grab onto. It's hand filling, but yeah, it just works out, which is really, really cool. Next up, access to the lock bar is really nice. When you they give you a good little cutout. With gloves on, it's a little more difficult to access, but that's, kind of just a thing with gloves. So I'm not going to hold it too much against this knife, but I did find myself when I was using this knife, if I was putting it away and I was wearing gloves, it was a little bit difficult to do it one-handed. So I would oftentimes do this. And, wearing gloves introduces new challenges. So like I said, I'm not going to hold it against this knife too much. Next thing I like, look at this stop pin. That is a nice thick stop pin for a nice big knife. I like that a whole lot. It adds the overbuilt kind of features of this knife, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, that's a great stop pin. It's a great size stop pin. So good. I'm glad I didn't, keep a stop pin that's like, the size of the Feldspar stop pin, right? They made the stop pin appropriate to the size of the knife, and that's really, really cool. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this blade. This is a really nice blade. RPM 9 steel is a steel that I really, really enjoy. The blade shape here, it's almost a straight back. It's not quite. It does drop just a little bit, so it is technically a drop point, but it kind of acts almost like a straight back. If you're doing push cuts or something, you can get a whole lot of power down on that blade. If you're doing like a draw cut, you got a nice bit of blade to grab onto and pull like that. This thing slices like crazy. You got a nice broad blade, flat grind. You can see here, it comes down to a fairly acute tip. Focus up, camera. It comes down to a fairly acute tip without being fragile. And I like that. This type of blade geometry is, in my opinion, just pretty much perfect for just about everything. This thing slices really, really well. And it's robust enough to kind of handle some heavier duty stuff. RPM 9 is a great steel. I don't have a whole lot of problems with it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good blade overall. Just a real workhorse. It can handle wood, can handle your rope, can handle cardboard, things like that. While I was using it on the ranch, this wasn't the greatest hay string slicer, but that's one task, right? That's one niche task out of a plethora of other things that I did with this knife. This thing broke down cardboard like a champ. This thing cut ropes that weren't, tied to hay strings really, really well. Broke down some plastic with this thing. This was a really, really nice knife. I, showed it going through some wood. Yeah, it works. It works pretty well. So I like that. Also, the coating has held up pretty well too. You can see it's starting to rub off in some places, but that also might just be, discoloration and stuff. I'm actually pretty impressed with the coating. Yeah, you can see down there at the edge, it's starting to flake away. But overall, not a bad coating. Yeah, I'm sure if I continue to use this and abuse it and stuff, that coating will start to wear off, but I don't really mind that, it gives the knife character. Next thing we'll talk about, the hardware. They gave you T8s all the way around, which is really, really awesome. I like seeing that. Thank you, CJRB. And, that kind of goes with the whole overbuilt knife thing. The pocket clip screws are T6, but I don't care about that. That's fine. But yeah, big hardware for a big knife. I like it. That's a very, very smart decision. So good job. Next thing, this is a cool looking knife. This is a very Dirk Pinkerton looking knife. This is it's a plain knife, right? We've all seen this before, but somehow it still has Dirk Pinkerton's signature. I think this fuller kind of adds to that, but yeah, this is a very Dirk Pinkerton looking knife. I like Dirk Pinkerton. I think this knife looks a little bit like a folding bushcraft knife. But yeah, it's a pretty good looking knife. So there we go. Next thing, actually, let's go back to pocket clip. I forgot to mention this. I like that they didn't give us a deep carry pocket clip. A knife like this, I don't think a deep carry pocket clip would have been, it wouldn't have fit the theme of this knife, right? I like that they didn't give you a deep carry pocket clip. There's not a whole lot of the knife sticking out, right? But there is enough that if you've got gloves or something, you can grab the knife and get out of your pocket very, very easily. And so, yeah, I'm not a big fan of deep carry clips on work knives because if you're having to dig around in your pocket to get your knife out, it's just a little awkward. But there's a couple different versions of this. You've got some red ones, red scaled versions, these blue ones, green ones, and each of those come with coated or non-coated blades. So, pick whichever one suits you, right? Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, the lockup. So, when I first unboxed this knife, I did some spine whack tests and I failed the lock. I was able to hit the blade in a way that would cause the lock to disengage. Now that's very disappointing, and it's not safe, number one, but the thing that I thought was even more disappointing about it is that this kind of has the spirit of an overbuilt work knife, and an overbuilt work knife should not have lock failure. It just shouldn't. So that was very, very disappointing to me. Now, the lock has kind of wore itself in and adjusted to a place where the lockup is solid. I have not had any more issues. I've done more spine whack tests with this thing, and I have not failed it. The lock has been wearing over. I can feel that it's moved over a little bit since I unboxed it. And that's something that happens, right? Sometimes things just need to wear in. However, I still would have preferred if this knife was not a liner lock. If this was a frame lock, even, I think that would have been better. But I think this knife would be really, really great as, maybe a crossbar lock CJRB recently released their first crossbar lock knife. I'm still saying that this would be a great knife to put the recoil lock on, which, do I have my crag with me here? I do. Pull this out of its box real quick. I've got my CJRB/Arson Cutlery box in here with me. The recoil lock, this is something that CJRB/Arson were experimenting with a while ago, and it just kind of never went anywhere for some reason. I think it's a really, really fun lock. I think it's a good lock. It's a strong lock. And I think it would have been nice on this knife with the thumb studs. They haven't done a thumb stud version, or a thumb stud knife with the recoil lock yet. But, whatever the case, I think this knife would have benefited from a different locking system. However, I can't knock them completely because, yes, this knife did wear in. And through all the use I was putting it through, I did not experience any more lock failures. So this is one of those things where seeing that lock failure out of the box was definitely a disappointment to me, and it definitely is something that I don't think should have happened. But I also can't deny that the knife did wear itself in. That lock bar, wore over, and the knife, as of now, has been safe. If that changes, I'll, of course, update you guys on that, but the knife has been safe so far, so I want to point that out. All right. Next thing, this lanyard hole. If you're going to use a lanyard on this knife, fine. I guess, you need that lanyard hole. I think it's in a weird spot. For me, like if I'm using this knife, I don't want a lanyard right there digging into my hand. I mean, I guess my hand's small enough that it could probably be out of the way, but, maybe that'll be a problem for someone else. Next thing, I mentioned that, the lock bar is a little bit difficult to disengage with gloves. It's not really a complaint. That's just a thing with gloves. The fuller, I do kind of wish it was a little bit sharper so that it'd be a little easier to use as a deployment method, but again, I can use it, so it's not a huge complaint. I just, I wish it was a little bit sharper, maybe even a little bit deeper. Although again, that two-hand opening thing with gloves, that does help. Next thing, the ergonomics. So this thing is, the ergonomic lines on this knife are very, very good. With gloves, this knife is an absolute champ in the hand. But barehanded, this knife is not the best ergonomically. These edges here on the scales are all very, very sharp. They're not knocked over at all. And you feel it, right? And even these little steps here, these little terraces in the scales, those are a little bit sharp too. And so barehanded, if you're going to be crunching down on something, I mean, I'm squeezing this knife really, really hard. And you can see where it left these imprints, these hot spots in my hand. It's just not the most comfortable thing ever. And I mean, look at my calloused hands. If my calloused hands find this to be a little bit too sharp, it's not okay, right? But yeah, definitely probably would have been better if they'd rounded off those edges just for bare hand use. Next, kind of the final thing. This isn't really a complaint. I kind of wish this thing was on washers, but it doesn't make a huge difference. I've been using it in dusty, dirty environments, and it's been, just fine. The action's great, so it's, it's not an issue at all. Lockup is solid, right? No blade play or anything, so there we go. Also, I'm going to address right now, this is not something that bothered me too much. The weight might bother you, but I don't think this knife is overly heavy for what it is. They did not mill out the insides at all, so it is it's a chunky knife, but I enjoyed that, honestly. It felt very solid while I was using it. All right, let's go ahead and go on to my final conclusions. Final conclusions are, this is a knife that, out of the box, I expected to hate, that I expected to give a very poor review to. And I'm very happy to say that that is not the case. This knife really, really made a comeback for me. And the more I use it, the more I realized, this is a cool knife. This is a good knife. This is a knife that I actually really, really like as far as a work knife goes. I haven't seen a whole lot of knives that got released in 2023. I know you guys are going to be seeing this video in 2024, but I haven't seen a whole lot of knives released in 2023 that had this kind of attitude, this more, working style knife attitude. And so I like that this knife exists. It does stand out in CJRB's line as, this big overbuilt bruiser. And I do think I would love to see some further iterations, maybe with a different locking system. This knife is not perfect, but it's really, really dang good. So, can I recommend this knife? Yeah, these go for about $60. Actually, no, I think these go for about $70. Actually, that price is a little high. Maybe $60 would be better for this. I don't think this is quite up $70. Do I recommend this knife? Yes. If you think this is if you're looking at this knife and you're thinking, yeah, I want a big work knife and I think that could be it, go ahead and pick it up. I think you'll be fine. I'm not going to say this is a knife that everyone necessarily needs, though. This isn't really a knife that, I'm going to be, you have to have this in your collection. Your collection is not complete without this. But it's a good knife. It's a really good knife. If you want one, go ahead and pick one up, and I think you'll enjoy it. If you have no interest, I don't think there's any reason for you to pick this knife up. So, there we go. Alrighty. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.